And this includes, of course, our two sister state relationships with Jiangsu and Sichuan. Now, today, I just want to give you a little bit of an update on some of the activities that the Victorian government has been delivering here in China, and then we can explore a little bit more afterwards. But firstly, it's all about the team. So, and our team is growing. So just last week, our new Deputy Commissioner, Nick Henderson, finished his quarantine in Shanghai and is now in Chengdu to officially take up his role. Now, I'm really pleased with having Nick on board because he comes to us from AsiaLink Business, has over 17 years experience of living and working in China in both the private industry and not-for-profit organisations. Now, I'm expecting his leadership and experience are going to be a really welcome addition to the team, not only to our guys in Chengdu, where he's based, but to the whole VGTI China network, and of course, to any Victorian companies looking to export to China. Now, in addition to Nick, and as a response to some recent food and beverage trade issues, we've also just engaged an agriculture specialist in the port of Guangzhou. Now, this person is going to be working directly with our office and with our team, and essentially assisting Victorian exporters, primarily in the horticulture space, in the food and beverage space, but working with the people on the ground at the port. So that means our customs officials, the customs clearance companies, and other importers that will allow us to basically keep updated and be able to report in very real time any issues that are arising at the port. Now, we specifically put this role in as a direct response to not just some of the issues that are happening more broadly across the country, but specifically around issues that we're seeing that are popping up perhaps even when products in transit. So we have a series of containers leaving Australia. En route, something happens, and then we need to work out, okay, well, how do we deal with this? How do we actually know exactly what's going on? And that's what this role is all about. His name's Cooper, and I'll be sharing more of those details with you shortly. Now, this particular position is also going to be complementary and working hand in hand with another new role that we're creating, and we're just about to start advertising either this afternoon or tomorrow, and that's going to be an agricultural policy staff member. And this person is going to be based in Beijing and very much focused on the quite dynamic regulatory and policy situation that we find ourselves in, where basically things happen and change pretty quickly, and we want to make sure that we're across what's happening. Now, international education also features very heavily in our work plans, and that brings me to the Study Melbourne Hub Shanghai. Now, one of the areas most affected by COVID have been the international education sector. In 2019, international education was Victoria's largest service export, worth over 13 billion Australian dollars and supporting almost 80,000 jobs. Now, of the 250,000 international students studying in Victoria prior to COVID, 88,000 were from China. Now, many of these students are still not able to return to Victoria to recommence their studies and are completing their classes online. Essentially, this year, we're now looking at our second cohort. So basically all the first year students from last year, as well as first year students from this year and ongoing second year enrolments, have actually never been to Victoria. They've never been on campus. Now, a key initiative of our international education short-term recovery plan was to open a series of study hubs around the world. And the first one is being opened here in Shanghai last month. The Study Melbourne Hub Shanghai provides a physical location for these offshore students to study both collectively and individually, accessing the support and information on a variety of professional and lifestyle benefits they would normally get if they were studying Victoria with a Victorian education provider. It's a two-story facility with level 2 dedicated to students' daily usage and level 3 being a multi-function space for various events and activities. Now, the hub has high-speed internet, advanced video conference systems, and full-time staff on site to support our students. The Study Melbourne Hub is something the Victorian government has done independently, and it's there. It's a non-denominational facility. It's working with 10 of our universities that are based in Victoria. Now, I'm always reticent to reel them off, but in case I forget one, but it's in no order. University of Melbourne, Monash, RMIT, Swinburne, La Trobe, Federation, Victoria University, and I've already forgotten, Deakin, Australian Catholic University, and Central Queensland University, who actually have a campus down on Flinders Street. Now, what we've also tried to do here is incorporate a taste of Victoria by providing, you know, authentic Melbourne coffee in the hub. And the best way to describe the hub is essentially it looks like a co-working space. Lots of tables, lots of chairs, long couches, individual meeting rooms. It's trying to provide a venue which is an alternative to students either studying at home by themselves, or perhaps going to a Starbucks, or perhaps going to, you know, some sort of other facility where they're just trying to get out of the house and remain connected. Now, it's expected that through the hub, our students are going to be able to strengthen their links with their institutions and their communities back in Victoria, and also forge new connections with their peers here in China. It's not just about the university they're studying at. It's very much simply about trying to bring these students into an environment where they're getting a chance to engage with other students. Now, the hub's also going to serve as a connection point for public and private education providers, educators, agents, and other education stakeholders. It's not a teaching institution, but however, it's very much so an extra space where all of our stakeholders and all of our partners can use. Now, you can organise and hold events ranging from recruitment activities or research collaboration or industry engagement, or even just alumni networking events. Now, this also is going to be a space that we're going to offer out to our trade and our investment teams as well. So if you or your organisation would like to host any events, please reach out to us via the Study Hub. And we're definitely keen to see how we can help you either find a time or just see how it fits in with our programs. The good thing is the space is free and it's for use for all Victorian organisations. So I'll make sure that the details are shared via ACBC after this session. Now, in addition to the education sector, Global Victoria is also supporting exporters to reconnect with existing markets or to find new markets to export to. You know, that diversification model that we've been seeing for all of our international markets, not specifically China. Now, some of you may already recently have seen that the recipients for our new Global Gateway program were announced, with 188 Victorian companies receiving $7 million in grants to do projects that support their export needs. Now, of these 188 projects, 28 have identified China as their primary focus, and an additional 29 have included China in a multi-country project focus. Now, the great thing is that this really just goes to show that despite the challenges that exist, and there's still really strong interest in the China market from Victorian companies, and the Victorian government is continuing to support any company looking to expand or export here. Now, for each of these 57 China-focused projects, a team member from the Victorian Government Trade Investment Office, so my China team, will be working side by side with the Victorian company and their registered service provider to ensure that we're basically able to assist in any way that's possible. Now, as always, Virginia, I'm keen to simply have a conversation and look at ways that we can actually address the questions or the real issues that are popping up from your members, rather than me just simply talking at everyone. So I might actually just pull it up there, and as always, I'm happy to address any questions that people might have. So over to you.
Right, thank you very much. Now, I don't have anybody, Zach, I don't think we've got any questions at the moment, but we'll keep chatting, and I'm sure there are a few things will arise. Brett, I'm really interested in this, in the hub. I think these initiatives are just fantastic. You've really got some momentum going with what you're doing. It's terrific to see all that activity. Here we go. Peter Goslow, you have a question. Would you like to unmute and...
Thanks, Virginia, and hi, Brett. I've just got
Okay.
some questions in regards to some of the rhetoric that we are hearing in relation to some of the agreements that states or companies are looking to put in place. With China-based organisations, we've been advised of scrutiny around some of those agreements. So I'm wondering what the Victorian government will do in the advocacy space, where we are looking at placing or doing MOUs and then subsequent operational agreements in place with Chinese stakeholders.
All right. So look, I suppose this ultimately all comes back to the Foreign Relations Bill and all the conversations that are being held around that. Right now, there was a submission that went through to the federal government, I think, about 6 to 7 weeks ago, and there were several thousand partnerships, MOUs, relationship notifications that were sent through to the federal government for review. Not just from Victoria, but that's just from everyone across Australia. As of literally this morning, I don't have any update for you in terms of where that's got to. We continue to work really closely with the federal government, but this is very much for the federal government to inform the relevant stakeholders as to what's next. From Victoria's position, we remain absolutely committed to all of the agreements. The most obvious one that people are obviously focusing on is the BRI MOU. We haven't wavered from that position. The Premier, the Treasurer, the Ministers have all been very vocal in their support of our commitments that are associated with the MOU. But we're also completely aware and will be absolutely compliant with whatever the federal government's position will be going forward. So, I suppose my comment to you, Peter, is that if you're looking at engaging and developing a relationship with a partner or a potential stakeholder in China, do it. I would absolutely encourage everyone to continue on as with a business as usual approach. We're happy to help out however we can. I don't see anything at all that would be a hurdle or a position that would be, as it stands right now, that would stop people engaging. So absolutely, yeah, I encourage everyone to continue to reach out and work with their partners.
Thank you. Now, do we have any other hands raised? Zach, perhaps you can help me if you see anybody with a hand raised.
I think if Peter just wanted to make a reply to that.
Oh, Peter, sure. Okay, over to you, Peter. Thanks.
Sorry, Brett. Just in the, I've received some communication over the weekend, which would indicate some of the work that we are doing currently with stakeholders. We've got some of our overseas competitors, in other, countries, actually taking advantage of our novel relationships to push more aggressively in the marketplace. Have you seen that in your experience, with some of the work that you're doing there? I'm talking about the UK in this particular case.
Yeah. So I suppose there's two elements that I probably want to address here. Is that absolutely everyone is focusing on China. So everyone in the world is focusing on China at the moment. Not only has China always been the number one trading partner for everyone, but right now, when I look out my window, China has recovered remarkably. The management of the pandemic and the systems that have been put in place have essentially meant that the country is almost back to normal, with the exception of international engagement and international travel situations. So as a result, everyone is having a crack at China at the moment. So, I'm not surprised to hear that you're seeing some of your competitors in place, because they are here. The one thing that I would also flag, though, is that What we're also not seeing at the moment with all the negative stuff that's happening is any negative consumer sentiment. There hasn't been anything at all to indicate that people don't want to engage and continue engaging with Australia or Victoria. So I think that you are going to be in an environment which is really tough at the moment because you can't travel, which means that it's hard. But you know what? So is everyone else. No one else is traveling here either. So it's a tricky situation at the moment where you do need to still have that really front foot approach to China, because lots of other people are exploring the market. But you also need to make sure that you're exploring novel virtual digital engagement pathways of doing your business development as well, because travel is not going to be something on the table for a while.
That's terrific. Thanks, Brett. That's great. Ben Dingle, you have a question, if I could pass to you.
Yeah, thanks, Virginia. Morning, Brett. Just on the travel thing, just maybe give us your sense, Brett, of when realistically you think we are going to be able to travel. I mean, I guess people in China have, as you said, they've got the pandemic under control, the economy's thriving. There's a sense now that while they're being polite, they're saying, where are you guys? Because we're back up and running, and where are you? My concern is, apart from sending people into the market on a long-term basis, when we can get back up there. And I guess, so that's one question. And the second sense is there's emerging political roadblocks here in Australia between, the states and the federal government, which is a concern. And I'm just, maybe you can give us a sense of how you see this is going to play out.
All right, so let me have a shot at the travel first. Is that I'm not sure I've seen that same messaging, Ben, in terms of that whole "where are you" type thing. In fact, I haven't seen anyone arrive in the last 7 months. The only people that I've seen come back into the country are long-term people with pre-existing visas or pre-existing engagements with China that have taken 12 months to get their approval to return. There's an incredible sense of an abundance of caution associated with returning visitors back to China. So we're certainly not seeing any advice that says you can come up soon for a trade show, or come along on trade missions or anything like that. So from that perspective, I don't see travel. I mean, travel is going to be impacted by a couple of things. One is obviously vaccinations, but that hasn't been actually, there's no pathway there at the moment, but there's a lot of conjecture around vaccinations as well. There's a lot of expats that I know of. They're actually getting their Sinopharm vaccination right now with the punt, basically, that if they've got that, they've got a higher likelihood of being able to leave the country and come back again. So for instance, from my perspective, if I left the country, I would have to go back into the whole reapplication process of coming back. And, I've got a fairly, compelling reason to be here as well. So there's no simple pathway going forward. In terms of when do I see travel returning? Look, early 2022, I think. But honestly, I could give you 5 crystal balls at the moment and give you 5 different answers. There's nothing at all that any insight that I can show you that will say, right, come November this year we're going to be in a better spot. Perhaps your second question there, which just so I can clarify, you're looking at the systems in place between federal and state politics at the moment. Is that your question?
Well, clearly there's a need for Australia to have a travel system with other nations. It doesn't seem like we can sort ourselves out on a state-by-state basis at the moment, and I guess my concern is that that's right now that looks like slowing down a countrywide adoption of travel policy to get us back in the air internationally.
Yeah, and Ben, I actually don't have an answer for you other than I agree with your comments. I think that it's a really big hurdle that we're trying to address here at the moment, because not only are we trying to work on ways, for instance, of how do we bring back international students, with a fairly compelling economic argument as to why we're pushing that, and we're exploring everything under the sun at the moment to try and work out how we do that, and we're working really closely with the federal government as well to try and work out a pathway. But I'd also argue incredibly strongly that the return to some sort of normality with travel is imperative for our economic development across all of our trade and investment sectors as well. So right now, if you can travel, you've still got huge quarantine issues. And I'll give you an example here is that there's been pathways that suggested of even using third country legs of coming through, and Hong Kong was one of them, for instance. Hong Kong is actually looking right now at opening up a travel bubble between certain countries, with Taiwan, Southeast Asia, Singapore, and other countries in the region. The Hong Kong mainland China border, though, is very firmly shut, and I would expect that if a bubble did open up in Hong Kong, that border would remain closed for even longer, because they don't want a vector. They don't want to have anyone else coming through. So there's no easy answer to this one, Ben. I'm not trying to skirt around it, but the reality is that I have no plans of getting back to Australia, because I actually can't see any way of doing it at the moment. And but more importantly, I'm trying to work out how can I get Victorians up here into the marketplace, and we'll continue to keep on pushing and exploring any innovative or left field option we can come up with. Sorry, Virginia, I think you're on mute. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that answers Lily's question on the travel bubble. There is no formal bubble plans happening. So thanks for asking that, and thank you to Lily. I've just got Justin Howden from Swiss has asked a question. Justin, I'm happy to read it, or I can unmute, or you can unmute if you'd like to ask it.
Oh, let's ask it direct to Brett. Hi, Brett. How are you? Thanks very much for
the Justin, good.
Brett and Virginia. Look, Brett, just wonder if you could talk a little bit about general consumer demand and whether that's holding up. So we keep hearing about the potential problems that might arrive for exports, but at the moment, many more categories are okay than are affected. Are you finding that consumer demand for food, drink, health and beauty items is still maintaining?
Justin, I think that it's not just maintaining, it's actually increasing. I think that there's a really, really strong demand for products that fit in the health and wellbeing sector. I mean, obviously your products are
Sure.
ticking boxes across all of that. There's, as I mentioned before, there's also I'm not seeing anything at all where there's a negative consumer sentiment. There's no one at all coming out saying, oh, because of you're Australian, I don't want to buy it. The single biggest challenge we're seeing at the moment is simply availability of product.
Yep.
Because there has been some restrictions, of course, in market access around a whole range of different categories, and that's the most obvious pathway that's causing the most headache. And it's not from the consumer in terms of they don't want to buy it. It's just that the consumer is looking for it. It's just not there.
Yep.
So no, I think that certainly the last 12 months have shown that consumers are particularly interested in anything that they can see as high nutrition, as anything that is a positive towards their health and well-being, because of the fact that a lot of people have also been eating at home now. They're having to consume their own products. They haven't been able to go and do the restaurants and the cafes and have some of the other sort of normal, everyday activities that they normally would. They're genuinely interested about the provenance and the quality of the product that they're consuming. So from that perspective, it's a really positive position to be in.
Thank you, Brett.
It's great, and I think it's interesting too. There are changes to the law on animal testing on cosmetics, and I know that opens a whole can of worms. We are going to be doing an event on that coming up, but Brett, I don't know whether you've got any more details on that at all.
Look, I think there was a session last week that we gave to the Victorian companies around some of the nominated changes to the industry, which actually haven't been put in place just yet. And I think there's a little bit of white noise happening as well, because there's a lot of people sort of saying, oh, but the French have got it, the Italians have got it. Actually, it's not quite true. There were some announcements that came out that were indicating that some changes were going to come in place where animal testing was going to be removed. It's not yet in place. So we're continuing to focus very, very specifically on this particular product. This particular sector. And if there is anyone on the call that hasn't participated in our briefing sessions or in the briefing sessions at ACBC, please reach out to me, because I've actually got a specific team within my offices and Melbourne that are working on this exact topic.
That's good to know. I'm also interested in the new role at Guangzhou, and you're saying that's agribusiness and food. The port and the real-time activities that are going on. Are you going to expand that at all into any of the other sectors? I'm just thinking of some of the issues that they had with coal, and how would that be handled?
Look, this will be primarily on not primarily. It is solely on sectors that are directly impacted for Victoria. So because we don't do coal, we're not going to be looking at coal or iron ore or oil or gas or any of those types of products. Essentially, the most at risk or the most exposed sectors from a freight perspective and market access perspective are very much in the food and beverage space. So very high profile has been the issues surrounding wine, for instance, and then other issues that we're looking at, which is around our meats and both chilled and frozen products and majority of our horticulture products as well. So that's the primary focus. The position is located in Guangzhou, which is predominantly where 95% of our horticulture products are coming into the country via either Shenzhen or Guangzhou. But the actual scope of the role extends into other ports as well, where we've got connections and products coming through from Tianjin, Qingdao, Nantong, Shanghai, Xiamen. These are the core focus. Actually, there's one thing there that I didn't speak about before, and that was the announcement around the wine tariffs as well. So I think it was about 3 weeks ago, the announcement was made in what can only be considered record time, is that wine imports from Australia into China will be hit with some pretty heavy tariffs. So this is in direct response to an investigation that was around some subsidised subsidised production perspectives. The reality is that it's now been put in place. It's got a 5-year window on it, and any wine product in 2-litre bottles and below, volumes of 2 litres and below, will now be impacted by these new tariffs, and they range from about 118% to 218%. So for all intents and purposes, it pretty much just means that wine exports to China will be non-viable, and we're seeing a big impact of that right now.
Interesting, yeah, and typical for a lot of countries and a lot of companies, and also in some of the states like South Australia that are really reliant on that as an export market. I'm just interested, please continue to raise your hands, but I just have a question, just emerging from our Chinese 14th five-year plan, Brett, just anything that comes to mind of sectors that we should be focusing on. ACBC is going to do a briefing on Thursday, but I just thought while we've got everyone live and you on hand, just to talk about opportunities.
Well, with the exception of the obvious ones like our food and beverage sectors, international education, other key areas that we're particularly focused on here are areas such as aged care, areas such as, well, it comes under our professional services umbrella, but professional services is just a term that covers basically anything that's not education and food. So if we look at aged care, specifically if we're looking at the design work that comes into that, at both the management as well as the facility design, we're particularly focused on the work that's happening around medtech, and also a lot of the work that's happening in areas such as fintech, artificial intelligence, but specifically in areas that don't fall into the sensitive areas. So, obviously areas such as cybersecurity, and within fintech, some of the blockchain developments, that's going to be really hard well, not really hard, it's something that we can't actually do. So we're looking at with the 14th plan, there's a very, very strong, heavy emphasis on domestic and internal development and internal consumption and driving the capacity and the capability of China internally. And we're looking at this then from the perspective, how do we provide services and support that will enable that upskilling and that opportunity to be gained for the Victorian companies. So I think that'll be the key. Not only just focusing on those sectors, but then trying to work out or clarify exactly how the different provinces are interpreting that as well, because each province will have its own perspective on how they should be implementing the direction from the plan, and we'll look to sort of create a bespoke or tailored program that addresses each of those.
Oh, that's very helpful, and obviously we'll be pumping out any information through that you send through, so keep our members well informed on that. Carmel Murphy has an education question. There's a perception that other states of Australia may be ahead of Victoria with a corridor plan for international students. Obviously, this is mainly media-led. Are you hearing any positive sentiment for the other states ahead of Victoria because of this?
No. And Carmel, we spoke about this last week as well at during our panel session with the other universities. No, most of the media that I'm seeing coming out of Australia, it's addressing a domestic audience. So we certainly don't feel as if we're behind the eight ball, or that we have any particular advantage or disadvantage in comparison to the other states. I think that rightly, every state is having a shot at exploring anything they can do to get the international students back, and Victoria is doing exactly the same.
Carmel, did you want to make any more comments? I can unmute if you'd like any more comments.
It's fine. It's what I think where that was coming from. I know mainly media led here, but we're also hearing it via WeChat and other various groups of students who are talking about it a bit. So we're hearing a bit of chatter. Yeah. And so we just wondered if that chatter is actually becoming bigger and bigger. So that's sort of behind the question that I was asking. Brett.
Yeah, I mean, look, Carmel, I mean, and I get it. And look, I wish I could rely on WeChat, because I pretty much would have all of my problems solved by now, because there's always a solution there somewhere that someone's found. So. And look, it's the number one question we're getting with our new Study Melbourne hub as well, is that every single student comes in and goes, so when can I go to Australia? When can I come back to Victoria? and I'm having to, literally talk to the principals there and say, look, I don't know. We're working towards it, but I do not want to put anything in front of you that gives you any false hope, because it's an incredibly sensitive topic that we're engaging with.
That's good. Thank you. Now I have 2 Belt and Road questions. Is there any update on the Belt and Road Initiative? This is from Peter Hansford, and how it may impact the Victorian-based companies. And yeah, any updates on the Belt and Road that you're aware of?
No, so Peter, as I mentioned before, through DPC and my offices, we continue to engage directly with DFAT, and literally as of this morning, there's still no update in terms of the position that will be taken on the Foreign Relations Bill. So I think, as I mentioned, there's several thousand agreements that have been put on the table for review. Obviously, I'm particularly focused on just one of them, and we're being quite direct and blunt around that as well. But we're very much in the position at the moment. We're waiting to hear from the federal government what the next steps are.
That's good. They're also asking, are we working with Austrade China team as we always do, and any key events and workshops in the near future? Have you got anything coming up? And we do, ACBC, and Zach will be getting those out.
Yeah. So, yep. Yeah. No. We have a really strong connection with Austrade across the entire network, because Austrade has a huge footprint here in China. So we continue to engage under the whole sort of Team Australia umbrella and platform, which has been really, it's been great, because we're getting fantastic insight from the guys like Daniel Boyer and the Senior Trade Commissioner team that they have across the country. In terms of specific projects that we're working on at the moment, we're partnering with Austrade in Hong Kong around a Festival of Australia campaign, focusing on food and wine, specifically in e-commerce. We're participating, we're partnering with Austrade in the Hainan Trade Expo, Import Trade Expo, which is a new activity which is very much trying to explore where Hainan's going next, especially around its free trade zone and duty-free activities. We're also doing some other work in Taiwan with Austrade, but essentially we talk with Austrade on a not necessarily a daily basis, but absolutely across the week. There's someone in the team engaging with Austrade, and tomorrow, for instance, we have the Education Council from DFAT, as well as the lead for the education sector in Austrade, coming down to our Study Melbourne hub, and we'll give them a tour. And we're working out how can we use this facility to really get that message out to the students in China as well.
I think the trade fairs are a terrific platform for engagement. We've been promoting the Canton Fair, and obviously CIIE will be around the Festival of Australia timing. I don't know whether you have any more details on the Chinese International Expo.
Yeah, well, we have every intention of participating in CIIE again this year, which will make it our 4th year in a row. We're just looking at some of the logistics as to what that actually looks like. I mean, trade fairs are a really important part of engagement with China from a Victorian perspective. But I also think I need to, be remiss of me not to point out that the way that we're delivering trade fairs now is really different to what we would normally be doing. So we can't offer the same opportunities to all of our companies that we normally would, because under normal circumstances, we'd have 100 businesses coming up from Victoria to come to our show and participate, and they bring all their products and their principles with them. In this instance, we need to assume that there's no travel. We need to assume that it's incredibly difficult to get new products into the marketplace. So we're sort of reshaping our services and and what we're actually providing to the Victorian companies, more about working with companies that have got products on the ground and people on the ground that can then participate in and represent the products at the show.
And I think it's just important that we're keeping going. We're not giving up. We're keeping up the dialogue, the communication, the interaction. It's so important. So it's good that you're doing it.
Yeah, and Jack, did you just mute me? I'm hoping this is also coming across when we're talking about all these different things we're doing with Study Melbourne Hub or with some of the other activities that we're delivering across all of our trade shows and stuff. Victoria isn't pulling back. We're actually going harder. We're recruiting more people. We're putting more people on the ground. We're more directly involved with the business sector than I think perhaps we've ever been. And a lot of that is driven by the fact that we're not being required to deliver trade mission after trade mission. You know, we don't have a whole lot of, you know, our visiting programs, whilst incredibly beneficial, are also incredibly resource intensive. So because we don't have a lot of those visits coming through, it means that we can reallocate those resources into other sectors, which are very much about exploring new commercial pathways, new commercial channels, or identifying new people who are potentially looking to source goods and services, or potentially even you know, foreign direct investment coming out of China into Victoria.
Susan Coles from DFAT, you have your hand up. Susan, I'd love you to ask your question.
Thank you. Hi, Brett, and thank you very much for that update. I was just a little bit late tuning in, but I have heard your comments about trade fairs and how they remain valuable. I recall last year's was very challenging, but nevertheless, I know Victoria had good representation. And I just wondered, we always love to hear about new success stories and whether there were any follow-ups or, you know, big new contracts or orders or anything that came out of the CIIE participation last year that you could share with us. Thank you.
Susan, I would love to be able to share with you a whole range of great big news stories, but let's be incredibly blunt about this, is that CIIE last year, also the timing coincided exactly with a whole heap of changes to market access and directions that were being put in place at a bilateral level between China and Australia, which had, you know, a huge impact on what we were doing. Success for us, we did see some new contracts. We saw some of our existing players like Freedom Foods do some projects. Vitality was doing some projects as well. I don't go into too many details, but they were pretty significant supply contracts, and I think they have been put on our website. But the reality was that it was a bit of a novel experience. It was, you know, I'd only been on the ground, I think, 8 weeks before we had to deliver that particular show, and yeah, it was a bit of a baptism of fire. I suppose the good thing about it though is that we retained a lot of market supply supply contracts, and that doesn't make for great news story in terms of, you know, big announcements on new wins. But, you know, right now, if there's an opportunity where we can retain or even limit, you know, any reductions, we're taking that as a positive. You know, literally on CIIE on our stand last year, we had I think it was 9 Victorian wine businesses representing, which between when they registered and put their product and when we actually opened the show is when the investigation was called for. So that made for some pretty challenging trading conditions around that. But yeah,
Yep, I hear what you're saying.
But
I guess I was picking up, perhaps, sorry to jump in, but I was just going to say, to finish on a positive note, I was excited, for example, last year to hear about the participation of Chemist Warehouse and like goat soap and some of those products that, and I guess, you know, services that are proving popular with you, as you say, that consumer sentiment and that interest in Australian, you know, quality products that that consumers still seem to be, you know, pretty keen on. So, but yeah, I hear what you're saying about some of those more challenging sectors, but I guess, yeah, you know, the fact that there remains strong consumer interest and sentiment is a positive thing. But anyway, thanks for the great work you're doing up there, Brett.
No, thanks, Susan. And look, those particular sectors that you're referring to there, they haven't been impacted because of all the cross-border e-commerce play. That it hasn't been impacted in terms of any restrictions in terms of market access, because there's obviously none around there. But where we have seen huge impact on that is obviously with the central finishing of the Daigou channel, you know, because there's just not the international travel is not there. There's not that ability to shift goods. So we're also really conscious that there are some good news stories, but there's also some good news stories that no one wants to sort of shout from the rooftops, because, you know, why bring attention to yourself? So I think that, you know, from that perspective, I'm really positive about what's actually happening between Victoria and between Australia and China, and predominantly because I don't play in the diplomatic space. That's your gig. You know, my job is straight up in the commercial trade and investment space, and I think that Victoria actually brings a fair bit to the table here, because we do have incredibly deep connections with our businesses, and both in Victoria as well as those people on the ground here as well. And we're just simply trying to act as the middlemen and connect people up, and then let them work out the commercial deals post that.
That's terrific. Thanks for that question, Susan. That's really really good. Just moving on to professional services. Interestingly, there's a question here asking if you've had any feedback on those professional services firms such as accounting, law, etc., who have entities in China, on the challenges they're now facing in the market under the current bilateral relationship situation. And I would add, anecdotally, I've heard that, you know, one rather large firm with a big footprint in China has said it's actually been quite positive, because there is no travel. So their services on the ground in China have been really utilised by Australian companies to do all that on the ground research. So I just wondered if you've been hearing anything similar on some of the positives.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that comment in terms of being able to be utilised better. The only thing that I'm hearing from some of the bigger firms, and especially in that professional services space, has been incredibly the difficulties associated with perhaps getting people into the country. So getting some of their partners and their key staff, getting them back into China. So we're seeing people being really resilient and really creative and really innovative in the way that they're addressing the restrictions around travel, and professional services. From that perspective, you know, professional services also includes, you know, some of our work that's, you know, it's intrinsically related to tourism and international education. And without the ability to get people on the ground and actually traveling, then there's always going to be some headaches there. But no, I think there's going to be quite a few businesses that we're engaging with them and we're aware of that probably demonstrate it's been quite a positive, you know, bottom line matter for them, because, you know, a lot of it is digital at the moment.
Now, Andrew, Rob, I see you're there. Are you wanting to ask a question, Andrew? So I just need to unmute. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks very much, Virginia, and thanks, Brett. It's been very interesting, very useful, your comments. I was just wondering, has there been, or are there any rumours or expectations, or what is the mood in regard to market access? You know, are we going to see any movement further against other areas of Australian business with China, or do you think it's settling down? What's your reaction to that proposition?
Andrew, you had to, like, that's the trickiest question that anyone's going to ask me today. So thank you very much for that one. Look, I think the reality is that we're not at the bottom yet. I think that there's a lot of exposure yet for impact across our trade and investment space. And I think that if I was being completely realistic, is that I think we haven't hit the bottom yet, and even when we do, we'll be hitting a plateau for quite a long time before we start to see any uptick again. I don't really want to go into individual sectors that we're exposed on, but the reality is that we are, and it's across the board. The difficulty I have with answering this question, Andrew, is simply because I'm not really able to influence the reasons as to why we may see a reduction, because these are issues that are happening, not at a national level, not at the subnational level. So I think that the commentary that I'm seeing out of DFAT, the commentary that I'm seeing from Austrade, also is in synergy with the position that I'm putting in place here, is that we do need to plan for an extended period of not just perhaps difficult times, but just uncertainty around the situation. But I want to be quite clear here, is that uncertainty and difficulty doesn't necessarily mean stop, or the fact that we're going to see a hard line in the sand around issues. And again, if I use wine, we know the situation with wine. From a Victorian perspective, it's essentially a $200 million industry which has stopped overnight to China. So we're now exploring other ways of how do we assist businesses to re-engage with China that don't fall under the 2 litre bottle limitation. So yeah, I think we've still got a bit to go, Andrew, and I think even when we do hit the bottom, we're not going to see a J curve. We're going to see a plateau, and just wait and see what happens after that.
Thanks very much. Appreciate the comments.
Thank you. That's terrific questions. Now we have 3 minutes to go, so the 2 quick questions and one quick comment from me. Just a quick question from Ben Dingle, just asking if you could have any idea when students will return to Melbourne and the probability of achieving that milestone.
Ben, I don't have a date, and I wish I could. I sit on a panel every week and every fortnight that's working with the DVCs at the universities. What I can tell you is that we are working incredibly hard and exploring a whole range of different options, but I don't have a date for you. And it's something that as soon as we do, trust me, I'll be the first person who's actually getting up in front of everyone and saying, happy days, let's get some people back into Victoria.
And Peter Goslow, just one very, very quick final question. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Virginia. Brett, with the hub in Shanghai, we certainly, in the feedback from both the federal government stakeholders as well as the Victorian, is Victoria sits very high in the relationships that it has with China. We're far better off leveraging off that than working with our federal counterparts. Given that we have that reputation in that marketplace, I know the hub has been principally set up for the use in the education sector, but I'm also wondering whether there is an opportunity to use it as a business focus area where you could be running virtual events, so we can actually face-to-face with some of the stakeholders in China on a variety of subject topic areas.
Peter, that's exactly what the facility's been set up for. So we have two levels. Second floor is sort of the study hub itself, which is all about, where students can come and study, basically, the tables and chairs and that sort of stuff. The third floor, though, is a 300 square metre event space, and it's primarily established to run education activities, but our intention is also to run trade events, foreign direct investment events. It's a facility that's purposely designed to be able to run exhibitions in medtech, or perhaps it's a food exhibition. It's really looking to capitalise on the significant investment that we've put into the space, and what we can actually use that space for. So no, it's a multi-use, multifunctional space that has got an education platform that's allowed us to put the facility together. But the full intention from Global Victoria and from Invest Victoria is that we use this space for just everything, anything and everything. And that's why I was saying to your members as well, is that if you've got an activity that you're looking to deliver, you need a space. Let me know. We've got this space available. It's huge TVs, audio, visual, all the stuff. It's all there, and it's all for free. So come and make the most of it.
That's good, and we might try to do some virtual stuff with you, Peter. Now I know we're just 1 minute over, but I do have an interesting question from Peter Hansford that I would like to ask if people can bear with us just for a couple more minutes. Peter's saying, abstracting from the trade area, I wonder if you can comment on the level of interest and inquiry related to investment in Victoria. You realise the FIRB regulations have an impact, but the interest in energy appears to have evaporated. So I just wondered if you had any quick comments on that.
Yeah, so Peter, as you intimately know, pipeline development is always going to be a core focus of what we're trying to do. The issue that we're having around energy, though, is that it does tend to fall into the sensitive industry sectors. We've got a range of different projects on the go at the moment across wind energy and solar energy projects, solar farm energy projects that, they are hitting FIRB issues, and FIRB is ultimately the gatekeeper that's around our FDI attraction approvals. So the interest from China from an FDI perspective has not wavered, I don't think, because of any, also with exception of those particular sectors. I think the biggest impact we've had on our pipeline development and pipeline conclusion is simply been that principals can't travel. And I don't blame some of our investors being a little bit reticent to come and put 20, 30, $50 million on the line if they haven't had a chance to actually come and eyeball something, or actually come and have a conversation with the person who they're actually going to be partnering with. So that for me has been the single biggest headache, is actually not being able to get the investors into Victoria. So yeah, it's not so much that we're seeing. Actually, sorry, I'll make one other comment here, is that, sorry, Virginia, I'm going over time here, but Peter, we do have to, we are shifting who we're focusing on. SOE engagement is less of a priority for us now, because we absolutely recognise the issues and the restrictions and just the difficulties associated with engaging with SOEs in terms of FDI attraction into Victoria. Not Victoria specifically, but just obviously the issues from an Australian perspective. So we're reshifting. We're looking at anything we need to do with high net worth individuals, any of the VCs, any of the PEs, any of the people that actually are specifically focused on industry, or industries that we see as being valuable from an innovation or a technology perspective as well. So it's FDI at the moment is incredibly challenging.
Brett, That is fantastic. We've put you on the spot there. We've drawn out information on all sorts of different areas that you probably didn't expect it to be asked on. So thank you so much for sharing that terrific amount of knowledge with us. I'm sure we've, on behalf of everybody, thank you so much for your time, and also your team in Shanghai who worked so well with us to put this event together. So we do thank you all. Look forward to catching up again in, say, 6 months. We'll give you some breathing space to see what progresses in the meantime. Special thank you to Global Victoria and the Victorian Government for all of their support for ACBC and our activities. We have a really constructive, long-standing partnership with the Victorian Government, and we look forward to building that throughout this coming year. We welcome you all to Victoria's upcoming sessions, including our CSIRO briefing on ending plastic waste on Wednesday, and our virtual delegation next week that looks on the topic of food innovation. We've also got 2 important national briefings coming up, an exclusive one with China's ambassador to Australia, and also an update on China's 14th five-year plan. For those working with China, these are not to be missed. So we'll send a follow-up email from Zach after this event so that you've got all the booking details and further information. So be sure to check your spam and junk mail because quite often they end up in there. So don't miss those. Once again, thank you all very much for joining us. I'm sorry we went over a few minutes, but it was absolutely fascinating. And we very much look forward to joining you virtually or in person very, very soon. So thank you all. Farewell, Brett, and go well. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.